All right. Well, it's good to be back for this second conversation with MirreKhan. The first conversation went pretty well. We were talking about threshold deontology, and I think we were at 2 points. We were at first critique, which was the intuition, whether it's intuitive to have a model that doesn't incorporate intentions, and the second one is whether threshold deontology violates the principle of supervenience, being that in order for there to be I think you put it, substantial change in the moral features, there needs to be a substantial change in the non-moral features.
Yes, exactly. I think that's where we were, and
Yeah.
I'm excited to kind of get back to that. But I think it became kind of clear at the end and over like text that there are some things that I need to have clarified about your kind of like conceptualization of certain terms and
Yes,
concepts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we start there?
Yeah, we should probably start there, because I think that's where maybe some confusion happened. So my overall conceptualization is basically like as follows. So there are non-moral facts about the world. I have that view like anyone else. Whether I don't hold to a view of whether a non-moral fact need be a physical fact, or whether there could be non-physical and non-moral facts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's not get into the metaphysical.
And then there are things that are moral features. So
yes,
to me, moral features are things that are badness or goodness. So badness or goodness are the moral features of given actions. And what goodness is, goodness is the normative reasons. It's the weight. Really, it's the weight of the normative reasons for a given action, for X. So X is going to be good, or X is X is going to have a moral feature of goodness to the degree that there is normative reason to do X or for X. And then the other moral feature is badness. And badness is the weight of the normative reasons against X. And so X has the moral feature of badness or bad to the degree that there is normative reasons against X.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there is something that are moral categorizations. So these aren't features themselves. These aren't really features on my view. What they are categories of normativity that we put certain things in depending on the moral features. So these categories are things like, there's a couple of them, several. So one category is going to be right. Another category is going to be wrong. You could even cash it out in terms of rightness or wrongness. There's another way to do that. We can get into that. And then there's another category that's like optimality. So right is not really a moral feature, but rather it's a category such that we place things in when there is a net normative reason for X. So if on the whole there is more goodness than badness, so if a situation or an action has more moral features that are good than they're bad, the moral weight of the features such that the moral weight is more good than bad, then we can place it in the category of right. Right is there being a net normative reason pro toto. There's a net normative reason for X. Wrong, conversely, is there being a net normative reason against X. So if the moral features on the whole are such that there's more badness than there is goodness, then we place something in the category of wrong. But then there's another category of optimality. And so optimality is just optimality is the it's the right, something is you have the most optimality if the right action in question is the action that has the greatest of the best normative features, being the most goodness to badness. So that's optimal. So two actions can technically be right. However, within the right actions, you can be more optimal. You could be you can be quote unquote more right. And by more right, we just mean that they're within the category of things that are having a net normative reason for X. There are certain things that have more goodness to badness and certain things that have less goodness to badness. So, for example, if you're going,
Sure. Can I
Sure.
throw? Because can I throw something back at you to see if I'm
Sure, yeah.
So you're saying, and this is kind of what you wrote also before to me. So you're saying that badness is the weight of normative reasons against X, right?
Yeah.
And this is a continuous variable that exists on both sides of the threshold.
Yes.
So then you're gonna get the outcome that badness is understood as, or like that X is bad to the degree that there are normative reasons against X.
Yes.
Yes, and then wrongness is understood as there being net normative reasons against X, where X is wrong if and only if there are net normative reasons against X. Is this correct?
Yeah, this is correct. There's just a little bit of subtlety there because we could, there is a way we can make a differentiation between wrong and wrongness. So I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could save that.
Yeah. Sure.
It becomes important.
Yeah.
But so then on your model, it is the case that wrongness or badness is wrongness is determined by badness.
No, it's determined by both goodness and badness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously. Sorry.
Yeah,
I meant to say that if there is sufficient amount of badness, then that is gonna make an action wrong.
Yeah, if there's sufficient amount of badness to goodness, right? If there's in that balance, if there is more badness than goodness, then that's gonna make an action wrong.
Yeah. So I guess I'm a bit confused, and I'm gonna kind of throw something at you, and that explains why I'm a bit confused.
Yeah, sure.
And that is because badness is typically understood as an evaluation of state of affairs and or the world, while wrongness is typically understood as an evaluation of state of actions. So, for example, both utilitarians and deontologists will acknowledge, generally speaking, that actions can be wrong without there being anything about them that is bad. The reason for this is that there are actions that does not affect the evaluative states of the world. For example, deontologists and utilitarians alike will agree, generally speaking, that X telling Y a secret from Z, which X promised to keep, is wrong, even if Z never finds out about this, and nothing between the relationship between X or Z or Y or Z or X changes. I.e., there's no evaluative states in the change of affairs and or in the world. Now, of course, the reasons for this will be different. The deontologist will say this is because, you violate your duties not to tell a secret, and the utilitarians will offer some type of explanation about risk. But the point here I'm trying to make is that obviously there is going to be, in many cases, a relationship between badness and wrongness. But this is not an analytical necessity, as it seems to be in your model. Because in your model, it seems to be the case that wrongness can always and will always be explained in terms of the badness. But I guess, generally speaking, this is not just how you conceptualize badness and wrongness, for the fact that badness is understood as an evaluation of states or affairs, while wrongness is understood as evaluation of state of actions, and those two can come apart. And I think this like indicates that there's some problem with your model.
Well, maybe there is. I'm not sure what that problem would be, if there is. I mean, I think I could conceptualize what a deontologist would say and what a utilitarian would say on my model, even with the analytic entailment. So, for example, if a deontologist, if I'm a deontologist, I can say that telling a lie violates the whether it's the categorical imperative, or whether it's the your deontic obligation to not lie, and that because you violated your obligation, then what you've done has the property of badness, because that has the moral feature of badness, what you did, and since this violation of your obligation wasn't required to fulfill any other deontic obligations or to prevent any other deontic violations, then it doesn't have any goodness. So since it has badness and it doesn't have goodness, then it must be the case that the action is wrong. I could do the same thing on a utilitarian view, much easier.
It's going to be easier on a utilitarian view.
Okay, sure. So let's try the utilitarian. Oh wait, so are you saying it's going to be not as easy or easier?
Easier, yeah. It's going to be easier. Like certain utilitarians, they disregard wrongness. They don't think there is any such thing, because they think everything can be captured in terms of badness and goodness. But I guess I'm still not quite following.
Sure.
How, if it's the case that on your model that wrongness is going to be determined by the net weighting of badness versus goodness, and then there are certain actions, such as the case I presented, where there is no impact on the state of affairs.
What do you mean when you say no impact on the state of affairs?
Well, so I'm telling you, so as I said, that X telling this secret to Y, from which they have promised not to tell, they have promised not to spread said secret, and they tell this secret to Y. But this doesn't change anything. Like said never finds out about this. There's no pain, there's no pleasure, nothing of that sort.
Yeah.
So it seems that this action is, if we understood badness as it's typically understood, misses the evaluative properties of badness and or goodness, but it has the evaluative properties of wrongness.
I don't think so. I would take that to be, so if I were to answer this as, well, myself, I would say okay, well, I would actually say that has the property of badness, even if it results.
But how?
Because you violated your obligation to keep the secret.
But then it seems to me that you're operating with a different conceptualization of badness, because it's true that you're violating your duty to keep the secret, but it's not true that in violating this duty to keep the secret, you're changing anything about the pleasure pain states
of
the world.
That's true. I see the confusion now. So on my model, the badness or goodness is not limited to pleasure pain states of the world. It's not so a utility, whether it be hedonic utility or preference utility, it doesn't exhaust the space of badness or goodness on my view. Deontic rights obligations or violations are also subsumed by badness and goodness. And so even if something doesn't result in any pleasure-pain state difference in the world, it can still be bad or good on my view.
So even if an action
Mm-hmm.
has no impact on the state of affairs of the world.
Well, not any state of affair in the world. The state of affairs of the world that result in pleasure pain, because there are states of affairs of the world that result in deontic rights violations that don't result in differences in pleasure pain. So some
Yeah, so
sorts, yeah.
I'm just trying to think
Yeah,
this
sure.
through.
Yeah, yeah.
Because this is just like a kind of a different way of like
Sure.
operating the term. So I'm just trying to
Yeah.
figure out how exactly this squares together.
Sure.
So in this specific case, in the liar's case, in the secret spiller case.
Yeah.
Sorry. What about that is it that the badness like what about that?
Mm-hmm.
What about in the state of the world is it that changes in such a way that there is an increase in badness?
Yeah, the difference in the state of the world that has changed is that prior to this, a promise was not violated, and then after this, there's a state of a world of affairs such that the promise is violated, and that difference is what is part of badness to me. That difference, like, gets subsumed by badness. Like I would classify that as a moral feature.
Okay, yeah. No, I understand you would classify it as a moral feature,
Yeah.
but so then you're operating with some kind of non-person affecting conceptualization of badness.
When you say okay, I need to understand what you mean by that. So when you say non-person affecting conceptualization of badness, what do you mean?
Yeah, so in the secret spiller case, there's no impact on the persons.
Oh, okay.
There's
so
nothing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, but you're still saying that there's more badness in the world, even though this badness doesn't impact any moral agents or any moral patient.
In terms of their pleasure or pain.
No, at
all.
Like,
At all. Yeah.
No
Okay, yeah.
on them at all.
Yeah. So like I think there are certain actions that I would consider bad, even if they didn't impact moral agents to any like. Well, I mean, I don't want to beg the question by saying it doesn't impact them at all, because it could be the case that, badness with respect to them still impacts them even if they don't know about it or they have no idea about it. But what I would say, it doesn't, by impact we just mean that they don't know about it, their life is not going to be any more pleasurable or painful, they're not going to have or preferences Yeah,
so in all ways in which you can evaluate the life of a person in terms of like their physical properties, there is no change in anything like that, but the world contains still but there's still an increase in badness.
I think so. And there's like some intuition comes for that, like for example, like there's the rapist case where like the rapist drugs the victim such that they have amnesia and they don't remember any part of it, and they don't have any sexually transmitted diseases and anything like that, and so they end up raping this victim. The victim ends up having no idea that they're raped. Nothing ends up happening because of that. They don't have any recollection. It's like they just went to sleep. So that would be a case where someone has committed a deontic rights violation, on my view. It has not impacted the moral agent in any way, and I would still say that there is more badness in the world.
So then I guess my question to you at this point, just so I understand, is that so given that you're choosing to operate with I just really want to note I don't think like operating with a non-standard conceptualization of concept is like a strong reason against the view or something, although I think it's like worth thinking about when you're going outside the bounds of like ordinary academic understanding. But my question at this point is then, what is it that you think badness is capped? Like, what is what aim is badness serving for you in such a case, in the secret spiller case. Now it seems perfectly understandable to just say, well, this is wrong because you violated your duty, or on a deontological model, or this is wrong because you increased the risk of there being negative utility on a utilitarian model. But what is it that you think, what extra explanatory power, or like what extra explanatory effects are you getting by also applying the concept of like badness there?
Yeah, sure. So the extra explanatory power there is going to be that I would like to have a continuous variable to weigh pro tanto reasons against the pro toto reason of something being bad or good on a categorical variable. So if someone violates the promise, or they spill the secret, I want to say I don't want to say is just that that's wrong on a categorical variable. Because if I say that that's wrong on a categorical variable, I have less of an easy time balancing that categorical variable, although maybe it could be done, with competing reasons again in favor of doing that. So, for example, when I have if I were to spill a secret, I want to say that I don't want to just say that's wrong, but there's it's going to switch to being right upon like some goodness that it will bring about in the world. So yes, you can say that, but what I gain from saying, well, it's not just wrong, but it's bad, it has badness, is that I can formulate it's derivable what point it will shift from being wrong to right based on the balance of badness and goodness. So if I formulate it in a continuous variable, it's just easier, and not just easier, it's actually like at least mathematically possible to summate the same type of units that are present in a continuous variable to form the categorical variable that I'm interested in. So the way I would simplify that and make it succinct is that when you have a continuous variable with the same units, it's easier to form a categorical variable that you're interested in when you summate those together. When you start getting into units that are different, when you start getting into units that are one is a continuous variable, one's not a categorical variable, you start getting category errors. And it makes it harder to do that job.
Okay, so it's kind of like you're trying to avoid the reason for reconceptualizing badness and its relationship to wrongness is because you think that what that does for you is it allows you to avoid certain counterintuitive outcomes if you're just trying to compare different actions in terms of their how wrong they are.
Well, not just counterintuitive outcomes, but category errors, which is a counterintuitive outcome, sure. But what I want to do, here's what I want to do. I want to be able to take the weight of reasons for different, like for example, if I violate a promise and then it ends up saving a life, right?
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to be able to say that, okay, there is some weight to the promise violation that counts in favor against the action of violating a promise. However, there's still more weight in favor of violating the promise because of the benefit of saving a life.
I understand that. But in that case, you can do that while operating with an ordinary conceptualization.
Sure. You can.
So could you like offer me a case? Or like I can offer you a case, and again, this is just like really like theoretical pre-ramble to get on board. So let's say we take again the secret spiller case, and now you compare that to another case where in the ordinary conceptualization of badness, it doesn't seem to be any change in the badness of the world. So we'll take something like you have promised to you have borrowed money from someone. and you have and now you have a duty to give this back, etc. But like both of you forget about this money, right? And we can just stipulate for the fun of it, so we just get a clean case by case comparison that this money for you couldn't do anything extra for either of these persons. Now, this seems to be wrong, and we can say that this is wrong. And now you have two cases where there are different types of duties being violated. And an ordinary conceptualization of badness, you will get the result that both of these cases are wrong, but they are non-person impacting, so there's no change in the badness states of the world in either of the cases. Now, but you say that your model offers some extra explanatory powers here. Could you explain that?
Sure. So what makes something, in my model, what makes something wrong is just a simple summation of the continuous variables in the same units. Whereas so I don't know how you could do that without doing something like this. So what you can say is there's some sort of, let's just say I'm a subjectivist. There's some sort of like attitudes that I have towards violating a promise that are pro tanto, and there's some sort of attitudes that I have for saving a life that are pro tanto. I can convert them to the same type of unit. We can whether it's moral value or whether it's my net attitudes or whatever it is, and I can summate them, and that's what explains that summation of the same unit on a continuous variable explains what makes something right or wrong.
No, I understand that. I just don't understand how that is applied in this case.
Sure. Wait. Could you just offer the case that you're asking me to?
Yeah. So in case one, you have telling Y a secret from Z which X promised to keep, and this is wrong even if Z never finds out about this, and nothing in the relationship between Z or Y and Z or X changes. In the other case, we have a case where I borrow money from you. Now I have a duty to repay this money, but I forget about repaying this money. I forget that I even borrowed them. You forget that I even borrowed them. We stipulate, just to have a clean case, that we wouldn't use this money for anything good anyway. The money wouldn't remain unused.
Sure.
Now, so in this case, in an ordinary conceptualization of badness, both of these cases are cases that would be understood as having no no relationship to badness, because they are non-perfecting, but they are both cases that are wrong. Now you're saying that you, by functioning in badness, you get like a better explanation of this. Which of these cases are more or less wrong? Could you explain?
That? I'm not sure if it'll be better explanation specific to these cases, but I can explain how I would evaluate them. So in the case in the first case where someone simply forgets to spills a secret, I would consider that to be badness, and the reason I consider that to be badness is that it goes against my normative attitudes, and so there is something that there's normative reason to count in favor against that. There doesn't.
Wait, can we pause?
Sure.
Your normative, whose normative attitudes do you mean?
Well, so in this case, I'm just giving an example of, you don't have to be a subjectivist here, or like, but sure, we can dispense with that. Sure. We can say, we don't have to index it to that. So we can say that there's normative reason against doing that, and if there's normative reason against doing that, that means that there's badness to it. And since there's no normative reason for doing it, that counts in favor of it to balance that out, or to even balance it out at all, then it is wrong. And then in the other case, there is a duty that was not fulfilled, which was paying back the money. That is badness. The reason it's badness is because there is there's normative reason that would count in favor to paying back the money. If there's normative reason that counts in favor of paying back the money, then it is bad. There's badness to not pay back the money. And since there's no normative reason to not pay back the money, then it clearly would be wrong. So these wouldn't be cases where my model would offer a better explanation. It would just come to the same conclusion.
Okay, so
Yeah.
So let me do this here. I'm following. So then it's just a case that it's it's defined in your model that badness is just understood in terms of normative reasons, and those normative reasons doesn't have to be person impacting.
That's right.
Or even like world impacting. They just
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. But I think there are some cases where this model would offer better cases. I think.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I can imagine that. Yeah. I'll do it. I mean, if you want to tell that to the viewers here so they understand, you can do that. That's good.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think certain types of cases where it would offer a better explanation are cases that are that would be really near the threshold. Like, so if you have if you have some in the case of like weighing our duties against consequences, which would be threshold deontology, or even So I think when it's hard to tell, when it's difficult to tell, what is the right action or what is the wrong action, in cases where we're not really sure, we have some reasons that count in favor of doing in favor of doing the action. We have some reasons that count in favor against doing the action. What this model offers is a way of, at least in principle, if you knew all the facts, summating them, so converting them to the same unit and summating them, and that determines whether it's right or wrong on the net. That's a kind of advantage. And that's the advantage of conceptualizing deontic rights obligations as bad as badness, even if it's not impacting with respect to the other even if it's not impacting. That's the advantage of this. That's at least one of the advantages of this model.
Okay, yeah, cool. So now I think I understand how you. I'm pretty sure now. At this point, I am grasping how you're thinking about badness and wrongness.
Yeah.
So, okay, then let's move on.
Sure. And then Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think. No. Yeah, I think once you understand that, I think it should be clear that threshold deontology on this understanding does not violate the principle of supervenience.
Oh no, I still think it does.
Oh, okay, okay, cool. Then we can talk about that. Yeah, sure.
We're gonna get there.
Sure. Okay.
This might annoy you a bit, but I want you to have you might get triggered at this, but I want you to have an open mind here and just realize that I'm not like the other people you have talked to.
No, I already know that. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I actually talked with your model. I hope that was okay with a friend of mine that is doing his PhD.
Yeah, sure.
At Andrews, yeah. So both of us now, given that wrongness is supervenient on badness.
Mm-hmm. Or badness, goodness, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, badness, goodness. And this badness, goodness is scalular.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us now, both me and my friend, we had the same intuition that you are not offering, in one way you're offering a threshold deontological model, but you're really more accurately described as offering a consequentialist model.
I strongly disagree, and there's a proof to I can derive a proof of contradiction that's okay. Well, actually, I shouldn't. Let me take a step back. If you want to broaden, I have a response. Like, you can continue, but I do have a response to this.
Because on your model, right, it's that an action is wrong if and only if it's bad, right?
Well, that's going to be true. No, an action is not wrong if and only if it's bad. If and only if its badness outweighs the goodness. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. If and only if it's
Yeah.
badness outweighs
Sure.
the goodness.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the same as if and only if it's
Sure.
bad, because bad is only when
Sure.
there's, you see,
Yeah.
and badness is scalar, right?
It's continuous. Badness and goodness are
Yeah,
continuous
continuous.
variables. Yeah.
Yeah, continuous. So then it just seems like you're offering a consequentialist model.
So that's okay. So that's going to be true if so if you allow deontic violations to be consequences. So if you say, well, you're offering a consequentialist model, that's totally fine. I'm okay with that, so long as you make it clear to everyone that what's happening here is that what's being subsumed as consequences are being broadened. I think, and the reason I say broadened is because I typically don't think consequentialists take deontic rights violations to be consequences. I know there are some views that might, but I think standardly consequentialists don't take deontic rights violations to be subsumed among their consequences. But there's nothing incoherent about doing so. You certainly can be a consequentialist and say, well, the consequences I'm interested in are the consequences I'm interested in here are going to be utility, whether it's hedonic or preference, and also the consequences that I'm interested in are going to be deontic rights violations. Now, if that's what you mean by a consequentialist model, then yeah, sure, I'll be happy to say that I'm providing a consequentialist model. I just think threshold deontology would just be one of the consequentialist models at that point. I would just say that, okay, well, if that's the kind of thing you mean by consequentialist model, where we broaden it that much, then sure, I'm happy to say it's a consequentialist model. But then I would just say that there are different normative theories that would just be subsumed under consequentialism, since it's so broad. Then, I think even deontology could be cashed out as a consequentialist model, on my understanding. If that, yeah, you could say deontology per se is consequentialist, because look, I mean, in deontology, like, we can take different rights violations, and we can say there's different degrees of badness, and you might violate some rights to spare others, and so there's different badness and goodness, and which one outweighs the other is going to be right or wrong. And so yes, like even just deontology itself is going to be a consequentialist.
Yeah, so I think that ladder thing you said, the ladder contract, I think that's wrong.
What?
So,
wait, on this understanding, is it wrong?
Yeah, like I don't think a deontologist would. I think any deontologist who's like would reject that. So,
on what grounds?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm getting
Sure.
to that.
Sure.
Yeah. So, for example, on your case, right, on your view, it's going to be the case that we say that, like, a mother is standing on this tray. A mother, she has two sons, and both of them are on the train track. And now she has an equal duty to save both. Any deontologist would agree with that.
Yeah, sure.
Now, so then this is posed as a problem, or like, so the solution to this is that she should flip a coin to determine who to save, because she has an equal duty to both, so she should flip a coin. But on your model, it will be the case that if, for example, one of the sons had red hair and the other one had brown hair, and she preferred red hair versus brown hair to brown hair, then she should save the red-haired one.
Well, that's a different type of criticism. You're going. It sounds like you're going for a reductio now. We can talk about that, but
No. So it's not a reductio. I'm not going there yet. The criticism has 2 points to it. So it partially is a reductio, but the more important part to then focus on now is the analytical part,
sure.
Which is that no, like the explanation in your case is for how the mother should conduct herself in this case is not a deontological explanation, but it's a consequentialist one. And that I think is
that's true. No, I'm granting that. I think we're talking past each other. Yeah. So I'm granting that in the cases where we equalize the deontic rights, then the remainder would just of the normative reasons will be consequential. But that's not the kind of thing I'm getting at here.
But
sure.
Can I finish?
Yeah. Sure.
So then, I mean, the norm in your model, it's always the fact that the normative reasons of badness is what guides you to which action you should be doing.
It's the normative reasons of that.
Yeah. So it's never going to be that do this qua do this is what is guiding you. And this is a big explanatory difference.
Sure. So you can say that duties are going to matter to me to the degree that the violation of the duties are bad or good. They're not going to matter in and of themselves. Also, same thing with consequences to me. Like, I'm not going to say all consequences. Just the fact that they're a consequence is going to matter to me. Consequence qua consequence. There are some consequences that matter only insofar as they're bad, and some consequences that matter to me only insofar as they're good. So I'll say the same thing for both. But here's my. I think this is getting past my issue. Like, all of this, I don't think it's being addressed. What would I take it that you want to say is that since I am cashing out deontic rights violations and consequences as goodness and badness, and what is right or wrong is always going to be in terms of goodness and badness, you want to say that I'm providing a consequentialist model. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, you're providing a model that doesn't fully capture what we consider to be ordinary deontological reasons.
Okay, and if by ordinary deontological reasons you mean that rights matter qua rights, and not to the degree that the rights are good or bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. So not to the degree that you could, say that they're good or bad. And I just want to make sure there's not any equivocation on good or bad. I'd have to think about that. Yeah. No, I'm not saying you are. But yeah. So you want to say that that's. So let me ask you this then. Let's say, so here's my reason for saying that would capture deontology too, under my understanding of good or bad. So the reason I'm saying this is because I'll ask you. So let's say I didn't have any utilitarian concerns at all, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say I had a modified understanding of Rossian deontology, and I think that the only things I'm considering are rights violations. So we have a duty for beneficence, and we have a duty for non-malfeasance, and let's just simplify it and take those two. And I say, well, our duty for beneficence is going to be good if we do this, because it will fulfill our duty of beneficence. And our duties for non-malfeasance are going to be overriding that, because they're going to be more. It's going to be more bad than good, because this action, while it may be beneficent, it will also cause harm to others. And so the fulfillment of this right.
Sorry, could you wait?
Sure.
I zoomed out for like.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. I'll repeat. Yeah. So let's say we have an action that fulfills the deontic duty of being beneficent on a Rossian view, and it also violates the obligation of non-malfeasance on a Rossian view, right? Now let's say I say that, well, these things are doing this action is bad, and the reason is wrong, and the reason it's wrong is because the fulfillment of beneficence is going to have some goodness. However, the violation of non-malfeasance is going to have more badness than goodness. And so I'm only considering these deontic rights in terms of what's being bad or good. I'm not considering any of the what I'm not doing is I'm not considering any of the utilitarian concerns at all. Would you say that the type of model I'm offering is a consequentialist model, if understood in that sense?
Again, I don't mean to be.
Sure. No, I can explain more, but
yeah, could you just repeat? So
sure. Let's say
there's a duty. Let me see if I can. There's a duty to beneficence.
Sure.
And in a certain case, it seems like I have a duty to beneficence.
Yes.
I should. This duty is instantiated due to the fact of the world. But me fulfilling this duty would be me violating a duty of non-malfeasance.
Yes.
Yes, and now you're asking.
Yeah. So what I'm asking is if I understand these moral calculus as just taking the different duties and assigning to them different goodness or badness, right? If I do that, and then I come to my conclusion on the basis of summating the goodness and badness that are derived from the different duties, duties, and the only things that can make any difference in goodness or badness are derived from the duties. If I make my decision on what's right or wrong just on the basis of what's good or bad, and the only things that can be good or bad are only duties, would you say that's a consequentialist model?
Well, I would say, wait, so there's an important, now I get your question. There's an important distinction here, because the duties that you have, the duties to non-malfeasance and the duties to beneficence, those duties aren't explained in consequentialist terms. But that is perfectly compatible with the fact that in a deadlock situation, choosing between them is made on a consequentialist within a consequentialist framework. Do you see the difference there?
Well, can you just say that again so I can appreciate it?
Yeah. So there's a difference between. So in this case. But both the duty to non-malfeasance and the duty to beneficence are not generated in a consequentialist way.
When you say they're not generated in a consequentialist way, what do you mean?
So I mean that the duty to malfeasance is not a duty that is explained in terms of its consequences, and the duty to beneficence is not a duty that is explained in terms of its consequences. But the choice between them when they're crashing, which one to choose, can be explained on certain conceptualizations of deontology in terms of which one has the best and the worst consequences.
Yeah.
So what I'm noting is that in your model, and the reason. Part of the reason why I initially was confused, and this is gonna then be important when we come to discussing the super.
Wait, before we get that, can I just get some clarity on that? So, before we move on, so you tell me if I'm getting this right. So, I can say that, what makes things rights violations, what makes things our duties, is not going to be cashed out in terms of consequences. They just are. The duties just are there. And the reason
that's what the deontologist would
yeah,
say.
exactly, yes. The duties are just there.
Yeah.
Now you can weigh the different duties in a consequentialist framework, right?
Let me be clear.
Sure.
So one way so a problem with deontology is competing duties, right?
Yeah.
Now deontology have many ways of trying to resolve the fact of competing duties, with certain deontologists just categorically rejecting that you ever have competing duties, right?
Yeah, like Kantian deontology.
Yeah. So, and one way for certain deontologists to try to resolve cases where it seems that there is conflicting duties is to look at the consequences.
And when we say look at consequences, do we mean weigh the different duties in a consequentialist framework?
So we're deciding which duty we're deciding which duty to do based on the consequences it has.
When you say consequences it has, do you mean like utilitarian, understood like in terms of like pain, pleasure, preference violations, fulfillment?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yes.
okay,
So,
yeah,
I
no,
mean,
yeah. Okay, sure. No, I understand that. And so they would say, okay, well, that determines which duty we have more obligation to. Like, I understand you can do that.
yeah.
But yeah, so I get that. But what I'm asking is, so that I understand that's one way to resolve it. Another way, but presumably you agree that another way to resolve it would be to say that, well, just certain duties in and of themselves are more weighty than others. So you have
certain other deontologists will say that certain duties are more important than other duties. And I just want to note something important nuance here. The reason they will say that is because of their explanation for how duties come to be in the world.
What do you go ahead? Yeah.
So, for example, I'm just taking as an example. So, let's say we're Kantian, we're strong, hardcore Kantian, one of those weird autistic people. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. We're a very strong Kantian. We reject all consequences. We're like, fuck any consequences. That's just nonsense. But we simultaneously will believe in competing duties. Now, the way to choose between the duties on a Kantian model is going to be by referring back to the mechanisms used to come to understand what duties we have, i.e. the categorical imperative. And then we're going to evaluate the duties in terms of which one matters most, based on the same reasons that we use to generate them from the category, or to figure out which duties we have by going through the process of employing the categorical imperative.
Yeah. I get that. So I understand that there's a difference between there's a difference between weighing the different obligations in terms of their consequences versus saying the different obligations have different weights, and there's the way we go about finding which obligation has different weighting is by appealing to some fact or some certain principles that make rights in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah. So, for example, I can say that, okay, well, murder is more weighty than just punching someone, because murder is a greater violation of autonomy than punching someone would be, right? And so
like that.
Yeah, and so if someone were to say, so my question to you is then, if someone were to just say, well, okay, I have different, so I'm a deontologist, and what makes things rights violations are the violations of autonomy, and the greater the violation of autonomy, the greater the rights violation it would be. Okay, and I consider that to be badness and goodness. So I consider rights violations to be bad, and the more bad it is, it just means the weightier the rights violation, and the weightier rights violation just means that the more autonomy is violated. So if
wait,
sure. Sure.
Are you operating with your conceptualization of badness here or the standard one?
My understanding.
Okay, you understand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if I were to do that, right, would you say what I'm presenting to you, would you say the model I'm presenting to you is a consequentialist model?
I wouldn't say that,
Okay.
because the duties in the first place are determined and generated in a non-consequentialist way. So the explanation for why I have the duty is not one that can be cashed out in terms of any types of consequences.
Okay, so that's the type of view that I'm presenting to you in threshold deontology. My concerns for what make duties, because I don't have a full fleshed out theory of rights. I'll just say that off the bat. But I do know that I care about the concern for my caring of rights. What makes so my concern for duties and rights, I have concern for them irrespective of consequences. So I think violating autonomy, for example, would form rights violations, especially if severe autonomous violations. Now, what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to cash them out into my good and bad understanding. But understand that the goodness and badness that comes from the duties is just coming from the different weightings of the duties, because some duties, on my view, are more weightier than others. And the reason for that is is because some duties just are more weighty. It could be because of autonomous violation. It could be for some other reasons, but it's not going to be cashed out in the way a consequentialist would cash them out. So that's what I'm trying to convey here. What I'm trying to convey here is that the rights that play a role into summating things up with badness and goodness, so to whatever degree that the rights violations are bad or good, that's the kind of view I have about rights. That they're weighty in and of themselves. They're weighty regardless. There's concern there regardless of the consequences.
Yeah, there's concern there, regardless of the consequences. But in the determination of whether or not both in the determination of which action to take and which duties to follow in a given case, that is one that is going to be, on your model, understood as that which you have net normative reasons against and for.
I grant that, but the point,
Reasons is a combination of different types of facts which generate normative reasons.
Yes, and I just want to be clear that one type of those facts that generate normative reasons are really deontic obligations violations that are there because they just have weight in it of themselves, not in terms of or maybe it's because of autonomy violations or whatnot, but it's what's one of the factors that are playing into that addition and subtraction are just things that are not going to be cashed out in a consequentialist framework. Now, I agree that once...
But the reason they have weight in and of themselves is because they have normative reasons underpinning them.
Right, but the reason... sure, but what I'm trying to tell you is what makes them... what makes them have normative reason. I mean, well, yeah, they have normative reason, but what I'm trying to say is what makes them have normative reason is because they are rights violations. I'm not saying that something is a rights violation if there's normative reason. I'm saying something is a rights violation, therefore we have normative reason. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. I think like a part of me, part of the problem I have with sometimes following exactly what you're saying is that I'm trying to detach myself from kind of like the ingrained model I have of understanding certain of the concept and trying to make sure that I always understand the concepts in terms of the way you want them to be understood. So if I'm lagging behind sometimes...
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in your model, it's a case that an action is wrong if and only if it's bad.
Yes.
Yes. And an action is bad if and only if it has net normative reasons against it.
Yes. Well, not net normative. Sorry. No, inaction has badness. Oh, is net bad? Yeah, inaction is net bad if it has net normative reasons against it. Yeah.
An action is net bad if and only if it has net normative reasons.
Yes, against it. Yes.
Yeah, and a duty is something which generates normative reasons.
Yes.
Which generate a normative reason.
Yes, a duty is something that generates a normative reason.
Yeah, and utility is also something which generates a normative reason.
Yes.
And these can be compared on the same scale, on the same calculation, because the normative reason has the same properties in both.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to try to ask you to spell out what the properties.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, the point is that there's some conversion factor. Yeah. There's something
that allows you to convert between the two.
Yeah. Or rather, more precise, more aptly, to take both of them and convert it to a common, like, for example, you can take diamonds and coffee cups, and you can say, well, I can convert the value of diamonds into coffee and vice versa, but rather what I'm doing right here is I'm converting them both into monetary value, right? I'm converting the value of both into a common factor, into a common unit, right? Yeah. And I call this, I call this normative reason, or I call this moral value, yeah.
Yes. What I'm trying to underscore here is that it's never going to be the duty or the utility on your model which determines the badness, but it's going to be that normative reason which underpins them both and allows you to have them in the same calculative model.
It's going to be the net normative reason that is derived from the normative reasons that are generated from the utility and the normative reasons that are generated from the rights.
Yeah, but the right and the utility must have a similar normative reasons between them in order to be compared.
Yes, that's that's different. Yeah, sure, but
the normative reason that underpins the utility and the duty, which and the summation of them, which determines the badness, and then the summation of them determines the badness, and then that determines the wrongness. Yeah. So then, what I'm noting is that, to me, it seems strange to claim that you're a threshold deontologist. I mean, I understand kind of like for lack of better explanation, the epistemic convenience of describing yourself as a threshold deontologist to people who aren't very, very like super well versed in philosophy, because there is structural similarities between what you're doing and what a threshold deontologist would be doing. But I don't think you are a deontologist as deontologist is understood, because there is this similar normative reasons that generates utility, that underpins utility and underpins duty, and it is ultimately that normative reasons which allows you to determine badness and subsequently wrongness.
Yes. And that's fine. Like, if you want to say that you know, I'm fine with like if that's just something that happens to be understood differently. I'd have to. I don't think I'd have to be convinced of that. But sure. I mean, I would just be okay with that. But the reason the reason I describe myself as something is because I mean, the answers that I generate are going to be in line with how a threshold deontologist would answer it. But the point is, but before we get to that, I just want to. So what I want to ask you here, what I want to ask you is that if a deontologist, well, I shouldn't beg the question by saying deontologist. If I only had concern for rights violations, if on my view I only had reasons being generated from the duties. So let's just say that, we take my model as it is right now, and we eliminate the utility, and we just say it changes such that utility is not generating normative reasons, right?
Well, so again, so we're just taking away utility.
We're and by the reason the way we're doing it is we're saying it doesn't generate normative reasons anymore. Utility is not generating normative reasons.
It's not morally important.
Yeah, it's not morally important.
Yeah. Yeah,
but rights are still generating normative reasons, and they're still generating this badness goodness property, and we add up the badness goodness to determine the right action, right?
And again, we're using badness goodness
in my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So would you say I would be a consequentialist? It's a consequentialist framework if I had a model like that.
So let me see if I understand. You're now a person who's only concerned with rights and duties, but you still think that rights... Well, what makes it difficult for me to answer this question is because I don't understand. So in your model, I can understand... I can kind of we'll get to that more later when we get to the supervenience problem. In your model, I can kind of understand I can understand. Let me say, I can understand why you would want to explain wrongness in terms of badness. But if we're taking away the utilitarian consideration, so utility is not an important moral variable. I don't see why why there would be any explanatory need to keep your understanding of badness.
Yes. Well, that's a different question. So I might be able to give answers for that, but regardless of whether I had a reason to do it or not. Let's even grant that I didn't have a reason to do it. But let's just say that I did do it that way, right? Let's just say that I did understand it in terms of badness goodness, and I did add up the badness goodness to get to the right or wrong.
Yeah.
Does that somehow make me a consequentialist?
If you add up the badness and the goodness in terms to get to the right or wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm just talking through this. So we have different duties, and these duties generate different amounts of normative reasons for and against performing these duties. And then when figuring out what duty to perform, we're adding up normative reasons and figuring out which duty to follow. Which
is right or wrong by adding up the normative reasons.
In the given case is right and wrong to follow.
Yes.
So I'm really not trying to sneak away from the question, but I can't answer whether this would be a consequentialist way of cashing things out, because I'm still not super clear on first of all, I'm not super clear on your conceptualization of badness. I understand what you mean by it, like analytically speaking, but I'm not clear that is a good way of understanding it. But I really can't in this case see why we would even operate with badness and goodness and not just directly talk about.
Well, I can give you maybe I could give you a reason why we might do it. One reason why we might do it is because let's say we're faced with a situation where many different rights are at play, and many rights, different types of rights, and and numerous amounts of them are all at play, competing and in against it, in favor of it and against a given action. If in favor and against a given action, and it's very difficult to just eyeball it and say, okay, well, maybe we have more, it's in favor, maybe against. If we're in a situation like that, it might be.
The only case I can imagine that is like that is some type of case where like a train track case where there's multiple people on the train track and you can only say one, and you have the same duty towards everyone to save them. That's the only.
Oh,
case
you
I
can be more
imagine.
imaginative. I mean, yeah, we can. It's going to be those kind of cases. It's going to be hypotheticals, sure.
Yeah.
But,
no, but the reason why this is important,
yeah,
because in such a case, and this is super important. So it's not about like my struggle to imagining, because in those types of cases, the deontologist should flip a coin. But if there are other types of cases where there are competing duties, so perhaps you have some type of case that, again, I struggle to imagine this, that involves people on a train track, and you can only say one person on a train track, but if you save that person on a train track, then this must involve you lying to some
yes,
extent.
exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But then in that case, what you should do is should be determined on a strictly deontological model based on the reasons used to generate those duties in the first place.
Yes, but no, I grant that. I understand that. But the case I'm giving to you is we can imagine that there are going to be many conflicting duties, and it's going to be hard to just do that. And what I'm saying is that so we can imagine a case where, if you save one person, it's gonna require not just one lie, but a certain amount of lies. It's also going to require you to rape one person, and it's going to somewhere along the line prevent another lie. If you do that rape, it's going to be attached to the prevention of another lie, and we can get into all this like crazy convoluted like example. Like if you have a case like that, then my approach to take, okay, well, this understanding gives you an easier way, or at least a framework of solving for right or wrong. It says, okay, well, you can take whatever each violation or duty is going to have a certain weight, and so we say, okay, well, each murder is going to have this weight.
Okay, so now I understand your question. Sorry, let me just see let me throw it back to you. So what you're saying is that in such a case, we have this multitude of competing duties. If we're then allowed to operate with an understanding of duties, where the duties have a kind of consequence, they are generated to some extent based on consequences, then this allows us to better understand which duties we should follow.
Not generated based on consequences, but rather,
okay.
but rather they just even if they aren't generated based on consequences, even if the duties are bad or wrong in and of themselves, even in that case, when you have an enormous multitude of them, of different weightings, it's an easy approach to get to the right or wrong answer is going to be to individually summate their value, their reason, what reason they provide, and this model of and this model of
go
ahead.
Let's say we simplify this and say that we have some type of deontological understanding where all duties are generated based on considerations of autonomy.
But yeah, sure. Now, what we can say is that so we can say, I mean, so you can, then in that case, if they're just generated to one, you might as well just do it based on autonomy. But we can say, let's say we have two different things that make rights. We have like autonomy, and then we have, what's another, like, I'm sure there's another.
Let's just take the vague one of respect for human dignity.
Yeah. So let's say we have autonomy and human dignity, and those are the two things that form our duties, right?
Yes.
And now we have a situation where there's an enormous amount of competing duties. Some of those duties are going to be generated by autonomy. Some of those duties are going to be generated by respect for human dignity. And there's a whole bunch of ones, and there's different degrees. Some of those duties are generated by are going to have a very severe violation of autonomy. Some of those duties are going to have a very severe violation of human dignity, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what I'm saying is that understanding them in terms of badness, goodness, even if they're just rights generated by the autonomy and by the dignity, understanding them by its goodness provides an easy way of summating up all of these different competing rights violations or duties to get to the answer of right or wrong.
So I just don't see why you would need that. Why wouldn't you just look at why wouldn't you just straight ask what type in what action determines what action has stronger or weaker respect for human dignity? What action has stronger and weaker respect for autonomy?
Well, the problem here. Well, you couldn't do that here. Yeah, I mean the problem here is that there's competing ones on each side. So one action is going to involve a lot of rights violations that are of the form of autonomy violation, and it's also going to be the same action will also violate human dignity in a lot of ways, and will instantiate human dignity and instantiate like autonomy in a lot of ways. And the same thing is true for the opposing action. The opposing action also. Now, what you can say, or we can just say one action has instantiation, has a violation of autonomy to some degree, and the other action has a violation of dignity to some degree, and there's like a whole bunch of them. Just saying what action violates autonomy and human dignity more, like you can do that. Like you can say, so one thing you can say, okay, well, we have some sort of like weighting, and we say each action violates autonomy and human dignity to a given degree, and we can summate that up, and we can say, okay, on the net, which one has this autonomy multiplied by or plus dignity thing. And you can do that without using words like good or bad. That's fine. But in principle, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're summating up your normative reason, whatever you're cashing that out to be. You're summating your reason.
No. This is the important difference. You're not summating your reason. You're investigating and looking what reasons are the strongest. That's the difference between summating them up.
Well, wait a minute. So unpack. When you say investigating what reasons are the strongest, what distinction are you making here?
Well, it means like in this type of case, the direction of the explanation is important. So it's not only about the fact that we have an explanation which takes into consideration all the available facts of the case. It's also how we explain what facts matter and why they matter. So, for example, in such a case, and again, I really have to say I struggle to imagine this case like in practice, because it seems to me just like that this case would be something where there is like perhaps like an original duty which you violated, and there's going to be duties of reciprocity and stuff like that. And I struggle to imagine, and like the ordering of duties and the sequencing of duties in which how they arose. All of these things are going to be important, and there might be some like written duty that has like the strongest weight, just because the fact that that's the enabling condition for all from which the action of all the other duties arose. Anyhow, but the point is that one thing I think at least there's a conceptual difference that has an important explanatory differentiation between looking at a case and from a deontological perspective and saying, okay, we have these different types of duties, they seem to competing. Let's see which duty I have the most reason to do, and looking at a case and saying, okay, we have these competing duties. Now let's try to surmise all the duties in the different action trees and figure out which action tree has the heaviest weight of reasons. That seems like an important conceptual difference.
Sure. Now, regardless of why we would do that or not, like some people may prefer to do the summation, some people would not. But my ultimate question here is, let's say someone did the summation. Let's say someone preferred to do the summation as understanding. Would you say that they're a consequentialist?
No.
Okay, so that's the important thing here. So
I wouldn't say they're consequentialist.
So if go ahead.
Can I just explain why?
Sure.
The explanation is important. Because the reason for why they choose to do one or the other is not gonna be an explanation that is because this set of actions or this action path is the action which has the best like consequences in terms of kind of like promoting the intersection of human dignity and human autonomy. But it rather seems to me that the explanation for which action tree to choose is because I have a stronger duty to do this action tree based on the fact that the duty is generated from the intersection of human dignity and autonomy, whatever in this case with multiple duties, gives me stronger reasons. So do you see the difference in the direction of explanation there?
So in the case where someone's summating it up, there's two approaches they can take. They can say, well, I'm trying to optimize some intersection between competing duties.
Yes.
Versus saying, well, I've summated up the different duty weightings, and then because one has a greater duty weighting than the other, I have a stronger reason. I have a stronger reason to I have a duty that forms a duty for me to do what forms the greatest duty summation or something like that.
So let me try again. So sure. One way to do it is to look at the duties generated by autonomy and the duties generated by human dignity and assign to them kind of a numerical value. So you assign 1, 2 based on some type of but that is going to require you to have some underpinning normative reasons for how to assign the point system. And then in that case, if that's how you do it, I would say, and then you determine which set of actions to do based on this point assignment, then you are a consequentialist of some kind because you're trying to maximize the points that you which is based on these underlying normative reasons which you have found or which you have stipulated to be equally important in the duties generated based on autonomy and in the duties generated based on respect for human dignities.
Quick question. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool. Quick question then. Let's say one of the considerations in those
wait, can I just add one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say then you in that case you aren't a deontologist, but you are someone who uses duties and rights as a proxy for an underlying normative reasons, which is the important thing that determines the rightness and wrongness. And this is
I don't know if proxy is the right word there, but I kind of get the gist of it.
Yeah, okay. It might be the case that the extension of that normative reason is one that perfectly aligns with duties that would be based on autonomy and respect for autonomy and respect for human dignity. But the intention between that such a theory of normativity on what the correct action is and a theory of the correct action where that is determined by the duty of respect for autonomy and the duty of respect for human dignity, but there is no underpinning normative reasons which allows you to assign points to different action. It's a very different theory because the intentions are very different.
So I understand. So that, and that's fine. Quick question. So if someone assigns points to someone's intentions as well to factor into the goodness badness, would you also say that that's still consequentialism?
So if they're also factoring in intentions, alongside other types of
Yeah.
moral variables. Yeah, because in order for them to be able to be evaluated in this way, there must be an underpinning normative reasons in each type of moral consideration, which allows you to assign the points to them, because the point must be generated by the same normative reasons, and then you're figuring out what to do based on the summation of those normative based on those points. You are a consequentialist.
Okay, cool. So if that's what you mean, by consequentialist, I will happily grant that I'm a
So I'm gonna say my first snarky thing.
I know. You're gonna say that's how it's standardly understood. I get it. Like
that is the only way.
The only way it's understood. Okay, but okay, granting that, it's going to be you will. So I will even. So that's fine. I will, but you will grant to me then that just about anyone who describes themselves as a consequentialist doesn't have these type of views that are like, or maybe you disagree, but when people hear consequentialism, they typically think of things like the standard types of consequentialism are going to be things that are come in the form of different types of utilitarianism. Or
yeah. I mean, that's what people typically think about. But most people are pretty dumb, as you know.
Yeah, no, so. I understand. So I'm just while I can say that this is consequentialism in the very technical sense, yes. In the technical sense, this is going to be a form of consequentialism, sure. The two things I will say is that the first thing is that's going to be a very different type of understanding of what consequentialism is and is not, and what it allows and doesn't allow. In that sense, like, so yes, this is consequentialism. If you mean so long as it's understood, because if you just say it's consequential,
obviously this is a type of consequentialism that is going to be different. That is going to have a different outcome than utilitarianism.
Yes, very very different, and also a different outcome than almost every consequentialist would give, like, because every consequentialist,
It's all right. Let's backtrack one reason, because this actually brings up a question I wanted to ask.
Yeah, sure.
So, on your view, So this is the question. Given that it always seems to be the case that we can self-sacrifice immensely to improve utility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we always have kind of the opportunity.
This is going to get into positive rights. Okay, this is going to cascade off into a whole other conversation. I'll let you finish the question.
Okay, let me ask the question.
Yeah.
And then let's see if it cascades into a whole other discussion.
Sure.
And if it does that, we'll put a needle in that, and then we can get back to it.
Yes,
okay?
perfect.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it always seems to be the case that I can do extremely much to increase utility.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So, and then that is the thing. If I was a utilitarian, that's the thing I should do. I should do the thing which is increases the utility the most, regardless of whether the cost that has on me as an individual and as a person, etc.
Yes.
And this is, always understood as the demandingness objection against utilitarianism. I think it's a very good objection. Yeah. I don't think morality can demand this much of us. But it seems to me that is going to be true for your model also.
So it's not, and there's this will cascade. The short gist of it is that I actually have different models for negative rights and positive rights. And this is a model for.
That seems like something important you should have told me at the very beginning.
Okay, so well, I didn't know if it was important until this came up, but to be fair, yes. So I have different models. So this is a model I use for negative rights, and I have another model, and I have a video on it. It's a little outdated, but I have like a 3 or 4 year old video, I forget how old it is, on my model for positive rights, and it involves thresholds as well, but it's a different model than this.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then let's pin that to
Yes.
potential third
Yes.
discussion.
Yes.
So I can, because I'm in no point where I can surmise an entire new part of your model
Yes.
and be able.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. So, and but to be fair, like that I would have clarified that to the first. This really was the first time I thought it was like relevant, because the objections we were talking about were, so far they were relevant just to the if we were only looking at negative rights. But once you expand
Yeah,
it to
no, I
positive
understand.
rights,
We have talked with different people before, and I get it.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, okay, so let's put Peter in that. Okay, but now we get to what I think is
Sure.
the very interesting part.
Wait, but can we just close off the consequential thing? So
Oh, we're gonna continue on that.
oh, okay,
Sorry,
cool, yeah.
That naturally steps into the interesting part.
Sure.
That
So
given that
yeah, go ahead.
given that this is how to understand your theory, given that this is the technical outcome of an understanding of your theory, I don't think you have a supervenience problem. Because it's never the case that the if and only if of what constitutes a right action changes. The if and only if is always cashed out in terms of the consequences of badness.
Yeah, if that's what you so provided, and I keep saying I understand that's like I understand that's it's going to be the mainstream or only way of understanding consequentialism, but the reason I keep doing this is because so many people understanding consequentialism don't see it anything remote. They would look at what I'm saying and they wouldn't see it anything remotely to be consequentialism. So I will say that yeah.
Most people think that consequentialism equates to
utilitarianism. I understand. Yeah, of course. But even more than that, because like even the ones that even people who realize that consequentialism doesn't equate to utilitarianism, they would still look at what I'm saying and say this is not consequentialism. So sure. So, but
I think I think if they are decently capable and have followed what I'm saying, they're gonna understand that.
Sure. It's consequentialism in the sense that we are including rights violations as consequences, and even if we include intentions, we're including the intentions as consequences, as things that we factor in on a consequentialist basis. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So as long as we agree that that's what we're talking about, and as long as we make clear that this is a system that is consequentialism in the sense that we are including rights violations and intentions and things like, or plus minus intentions, along with utility as consequences, then that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, but I just want to note that, and this is what I mentioned. Although I was going to get at it a bit of a different way because I understood your model differently before. But this is what I mentioned with the wrong type of reason problem, that a deontologist would just look at this and they would say, yes, we're getting the same judgment on what actions are right or wrong. Perhaps I will grant basically in almost every case, but we're getting them, the deontologist will say, but you're getting them for the wrong kinds of reason, man. You're not respecting what it means to have a duty and to do duties.
Yes.
So that's the wrong type of reason problem that I think a deontologist would have with your model.
Well, I think that so they would say that, so a deontologist would say that, they'll look at me and say, well, we're getting the same answers. However, I'm getting them because I'm not understanding rights as consequences, and by that we just mean rights.
Yeah, they're not understanding rights as something you can put a number on and compare it to non-rights and put a number on that.
Exactly. No, that's fine. I grant that there are deontologists that would say that. The pushback that I will give you is, and this is because I have read certain threshold deontologists in the literature. There are threshold deontologists in the literature that do seem to be describing their threshold deontologist in this kind of deontologist model in this kind of way.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
point
So
you to one at least. Yeah.
So I have dyslexia, so I like to think more than I like to read. But I did look through the threshold deontological literature, and I mean, I think there are in total 4 papers that deal with.
There's over 10.
What?
There's over 10 papers.
Oh, there are over 10 papers. Okay, so then you can send me those
Sure.
papers, and I'll have a look at them. Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. But now that we sorted this out, you have put in the clarifications you wanted for the audience. I think that's good. All fine and dandy. Then it seems to me, but the conversation is not over yet. But then
Sure.
it's clear that well, you don't have a supervenience problem.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, because you're not above and below the threshold. There's no change in the if and only if of right and wrong actions. They're actually generated in the same way, and they're generated on this consequence-based way. Yes, cool. But now I want to ask you, so perhaps this was a bit of a disappointing conclusion for the viewers who really wanted us to get into the meat and potatoes of moral supervenience. But, as it turned out on further inquiry, that is not something that applies here due to the fact that you are operating with a type of consequence-based model where the consequences are always what determines rightness and wrongness. Cool. But now I want to push on something else, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
And these are minor quibbles, I think. Well, actually, before I get there, I just want to hear, because I'm just curious. So you are just like, you don't think it's counterintuitive, this case where the mother, she shouldn't flip a coin on your model. She should save the child that has red hair because she has like the most minute preference for red-hairedness.
Well, I do think it's I do think it's superficially counterintuitive. The reason is because the reason I think that's counterintuitive is because the degree to which that matters in this question is so small that it's very hard for us to imagine a case where something turns on that. But if we stipulate all of these different, the facts of the worlds are such that something so trivial and minute and minuscule really was exactly on that fence, then no, it wouldn't be counterintuitive upon further investigation. So yes, it is counterintuitive, like on its face. But I have an explanation. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'm gonna push here.
Sure. Sure.
I don't think this case is so outrageous, actually, because I mean, this is like a standard case of she has. We don't even have to talk about red-hairedness. She has 2 children. She obviously have very strong reasons to treat the children equally. I mean, we all agree on that.
Yeah.
We all agree that, at least in terms of the children's ability to live, she has very strong reasons to treat them equally and not favor one above the other. But it seems to be the case that on your model, in this type of life and death situation, where she can only save one, if she had a slight preference, just
for one child over the other, yeah.
Over the other, which also most parents, if they really are honest, they have a slight preference.
They do. Yeah.
She would actually be doing something wrong by flipping a coin to decide which child she should save.
Yeah. And the reason for so one thing I'll say is that whatever degree of wrongness this is, it's so minuscule. But and to the degree that it's not minuscule is to the degree so that it's less counterintuitive.
Wait, sorry, pause.
Yeah, sure.
It seems to me that you can say that it's the degree of badness.
Yes, the degree. Sorry. Yes, the degree of badness. Sure. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is gonna be the case because it says wrong is a categorical
value.
Yeah,
Sure. Yes.
That if she flips a coin and she's doing wrong.
Yeah, she's doing something wrong, but not, of course. But again, the important thing to include there, to not, take things out of context, would be to say that wrong thing carries very little moral features that are bad. It's a trivial type of wrong. And the reason why on its face that sounds counterintuitive at first is because we have a look. I mean, if you this is going to be applied to me as well as anyone who is a utilitarian or of
Yeah, no, I grant. Yeah, I grant that.
Yeah, this is not going to be unique to me. So the answer I'm gonna I can give. I
think it's fine for you to give a comparative answer here.
Yeah,
I think it's fine for you to say, look, this is a problem that utilitarianism is also gonna have, but my model, I think it has all these other benefits compared to utilitarianism, so I'm not overly worried about this. But I do think, and we can get into. I do think, if you give an answer in terms of like, well, according to my model, this is just the way it is, and hence I don't think it's counterintuitive.
No. I'm not saying that because I said at the outset, like I'll grant you at least on its face, it seems counterintuitive. What I'm trying to do is give you an explanation for why it is that way, and upon further investigation, while it may still seem counterintuitive, it's not as counterintuitive.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
great, good. I like the fact that you're being honest here, because I mean, biting the bullets is something everyone's gonna have to do in normative theorizing. That's just part of it. But I want to ask you one more thing that, just because it's just in terms of counterintuitive implications of your model.
Sure.
And this one seems to me to be quite big, actually.
Okay, cool. Go for
it. So let's say on your model, I'm considering whether to kill a person.
Okay.
And obviously I shouldn't do that. The only reason I have for murdering a person is that if I murder this person, that's the only way I can get an ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, on your model, that is not going to be sufficient reason for murdering the person, right?
Yes, that's not going to be a sufficient reason for murdering the person.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
But doesn't it seem super strange to claim that by not murdering the person, I am generating some amount of badness into the world?
I mean, it seems it also so I'll have to think about that because it seems strange to even get my mind around generating things out of non-action. I guess I can understand generating things out of non-action rather than action.
Causes by omission are just generally accepted as causes.
Sure, causes. Yeah. You cause something by inaction. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that's that strange. I mean,
no, but surely it's like a bit strange to say that I'm causing some badness in the world by not murdering someone.
No. I mean, No. Okay, so yes, when you say it like that on its face, sure, that sounds very weird. But like, it seems like I'll just put a flag here because I think there's this common theme in these reductios where it's like we have this very counterintuitive thing that starts off counterintuitive, like on a very superficial understanding, especially for like the audience listening who may have a superficial understanding of this. Sure, it will, but I think on a deeper analysis, like not really. And also, I'll give a couple of answers. I'll give the comparative answer. This is just as much of a problem on virtually all forms of utilitarianism as it is on my model. Because it is the case that not murdering someone as a utilitarian can generate. Yeah.
No. That's not true. That's not true.
No. What? Go ahead.
No, that's not. This case is not a problem on utilitarianism.
Why not?
Because on utilitarianism, an action is right if and only if it maximizes utility, right?
An action is right if and only if it maximizes utility. That's true. But what about goodness, badness?
Yeah. So an action. So if we want to be a utilitarian who cashes out, so who ignores rightness as something important more in future, we're gonna be a utilitarian who says an action is bad if and only if it maximizes utility.
An action is bad if it only maximizes.
No, so an action is good if and only if it maximizes.
Oh, okay. An action is good if and only if it maximizes utility.
the utilitarian doesn't have to commit themselves in any way whatsoever to say that in the case where you murder someone and don't get an ice cream lick, you're increasing the badness in someone.
Would you say that on a utilitarian view, each increase in utility, the different increases in utility are like reasons that count in favor of an action versus an action?
So, I mean, the reason I don't think that's the way to understand utilitarianism is because utilitarians are total. We're operating as total utilitarians here, because this problem doesn't have to apply to rule utilitarians, because they can just specify some weird rules like they always do and act like it's cool and dandy. But okay, so because total utilitarians will say that any action that doesn't maximize the amount of goodness in the world is a bad action.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Okay, well, if you do that, you'll escape it. I grant that. Of course, there'll be other things that sound counterintuitive about that, like for yeah. Okay, so you'll.
So,
I mean,
I do think I do think this problem might be a unique problem for.
So it may. It may. I mean, maybe. I mean, here's what I'll say. I mean, I'll say that. Look, if there are certain, the precise way I'll say it is. There are certain, to whatever degree that not murdering someone generates badness, is just going to be countervailed by the extreme amount of more goodness that is generated by not murdering someone. And yes, on its surface, it may seem to be counterintuitive that not murdering someone generates goodness, but I think if you look at analytically what I mean by goodness and badness, it's just going to be down to our normative reasons in favor of an action, and our normative reasons in favor of an action are just going to be understood in terms of the concerns of rights violations and utility. Then yeah, I mean it's going to be, it's good. Look, I mean. I actually, like, the more I'm thinking about it, the more it's not, because, like, there's probably a whole bunch of different people in the world, and there's going to be, more or less utility by killing an individual, depending on how terrible of an individual they are. But in an overwhelming majority of cases, no matter whatever utility you're going to generate by killing someone, it's going to be just outweighed by the reasons to not kill someone, and so, I'm actually more tempted to bite the bullet on the first K thing you said than like this bullet seems actually smaller to me than the previous bullet, to be honest, like because that's just to say, on my view, that if you murder someone, there could be. You could have a case where murdering someone generates utility, and I'll just grant that. Like, yeah, and since it generates utility, there's some goodness that can be generated by murdering someone. But the important point here is that, in context, the badness of murdering someone is just going to far outweigh that. I don't think that's that counterintuitive.
I just wanted to raise this, but let's move on to the to meat and potato question, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
This is something you wrote to me. So I don't know if you still stand by this, because you can have thought more about it, and that's perfectly fine. But the way you drew it up, you said that right or wrong is a categorical variable that supervenes on goodness and badness, which is a continuous variable, which supervenes.
Oh, I thought, I did think more about that actually, and I have changed my view.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Okay, because what I want to note is that this can't be the case, right? Because
supervening is transitive, right?
What?
Right or wrong, so wait, let's just make sure we're on the same page. So right or wrong supervenes on good or bad, which supervenes on the non-normative features.
Yes, that's
Okay.
that's what you wrote.
Okay, so that I agree with. Sure.
Yeah, no, okay, so that can't be the case.
Why not?
Supervenience has to do with covariability, right? And if you look it up again, you can pull up the understanding of supervenience. Given that how supervenience is understood, it should be the case that any change in goodness and badness would result in a change in rightness and wrongness. But that's not the case.
I don't know if that. Wait, hold on. I understood supervenience to mean that there can't be a. So if A supervenes on B, there can't be a change in.
B without being a change in A.
Oh, I thought it was there can't be a change in A without there being a change in B. Are you saying it's the other way around?
But if A supervenes on B,
Yeah.
there can't any change in B must result in a change in A.
Wait a minute. Wait. Hold on. Wait, just tell me if I'm wrong here in my understanding. If
Yeah.
A supervenes on B, I take that to mean that any change in A must require a change in B. Is that wrong?
Any change in A must require a change in B.
Yes.
That's true.
Okay. Yeah, A is said to supervene on B if and only if some difference in
It's necessary for any difference in X.
yeah, if there's any difference in if any difference in A entails a difference in B. So another way of saying that is if some difference in B is necessary for any difference in A. We agree on that?
Wait. So X supervenes on Y.
Sure.
If and only if Y is necessary for any difference in X to be possible.
If
right?
well, to be clear, if and only if some difference in Y is necessary for any difference in X to be possible.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So if I say, So if I say that, what I want to say is that right or wrong supervenes on goodness, badness, and what that means is that for there to be a difference in rightness or wrongness, it requires a difference in goodness and badness. And
for there to be a difference in rightness and wrongness, there requires a difference in goodness and badness.
Yes. And then for there to be a difference in goodness and badness, there requires it to be a difference in the non-moral features.
Yeah, okay, that's what you want to say. Okay, now I understand what you want to say. Yeah, okay, that wasn't clear to me. Okay, yeah, but so then I move on to the second thing.
Wait, but you agree that was true then,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Then I agree. Yeah, but then
Okay,
I
cool.
move on to the second thing,
All right.
which is given that rightness and wrongness supervenes on goodness and badness supervenes on non-moral features. It just seems to me to be the case that rightness and wrongness supervenes on non-moral features.
So it does, and in the following way. It does because supervenience is transitive, or at least okay. I understand I'll just say it because like there's maybe some people who are PhDs who may like get on my case. I understand that there are some papers. They're rare. I think we agree that the majority of philosophy considers supervenience to be a transitive property, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm aware of a few papers that try to argue it's not transitive, but let's ignore those for the sake of the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So putting that. Yeah. So let's go. Okay. So yes. So I'll say yes.
No, but wait. If you say yes, it seems to me that the explanation of rightness and wrongness is not an explanation in terms of goodness and badness, but an explanation that directly targets the non-moral features of the world.
Well, not necessarily. Okay, so it could. Well, I don't know. I don't know if the explanation there follows, because if something supervenes. Wait, hold on 1 minute. Because if there's a transitivity of supervenience from like A to B to C, it doesn't mean. I'm not sure it follows that. I mean, it may follow that there's an explanation, but it may not be an easy explanation. Because like if you have some A supervening on B, which is supervening on C, yes, there may be some way to understand A in terms of C. However, it could be that it's a very difficult way to do that, and it's a much easier way. Yeah, it's still going to be a much
So then the goodness badness is an explanatory tool for rightness and wrongness, not. But it doesn't say anything about the metaphysical relationship between goodness and badness and rightness and wrongness.
I'd have to think about that because what I want to say is that.
Well, like right now, where you are in your model right now, that seems to be the case.
Yeah, no. I'm not. I'm just saying that. It could still be the case that there's these moral features that are B, and these properties that are in the world that are C. What rightness and wrongness is to me is just a category that we form on the basis of the moral features. And so yes, that category, there is a way to understand the category that we would make on these moral features without the moral. I don't even actually. So there's going to be a lot of problems with dropping the link there, because what rightness or wrongness is to me is just a categorization on the basis of goodness and badness. It's a categorization on the moral those moral features. Now, if you want to ask me, if we didn't have any knowledge of, if we didn't have any knowledge of the goodness badness, yes, it's still the case that the goodness rightness wrongness would still supervene on the non-moral features. That's true. Yeah. I agree with that. But of course, I still think the. Oh, sorry, my dogs are. Give me 1 second. I still think that the moral features are there. Like I don't want to say like commit to any but I still think that they are the moral features. And I think they do two things. So I do think that they're there, and I also think that they do a better job at explaining as well. So I think it's both. I think they are there, and they do a better job of explaining as well. There may be a way to understand rightness and wrongness just in terms of the non-moral features. There may be a way to do that. But two things are there. That doesn't mean, it doesn't follow from that the goodness badness is not there. It doesn't follow from that those moral features are not there, and it certainly doesn't follow that it would be a better way, an easier way of understanding it. So yeah.
Well, so it seems to me to be the case that in your model, I just want to say I'm following everything you're saying here.
Sure.
And I think what you're saying makes sense to a certain extent. So I don't think you're like saying things that are like stupid categorically. But it seems to me to be the case that given that rightness and wrongness is determined in your model by the goodness and the badness, and the goodness and the badness is determined by the net normative reasons, which is generated by the non-moral features.
Well, it just is that. That's what it is. It's not like...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not that it's determined by... It is the net norm, yeah.
Yeah. Then it seems to me that you need some type of principled reason for claiming that goodness and badness ought to be that which explains rightness and wrongness. Because clearly it's the case that rightness and wrongness, in its most fine-grained analysis, is just explained by net normative reasons.
Oh, sure. So yeah. So yeah, net normative reasons explain rightness and wrongness.
Yeah.
And
net normative reasons explain goodness and badness. So it's not the
Oh,
case
no.
that net
I think
normative...
I see the confusion. Yeah. So no, so it's not that net. It's not that net normative reasons explain goodness and badness. I'm saying net normative reasons are goodness and badness. It's just a word that I use for net normative reasons. So the where someone sorry. Actually no, I misspoke. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Rightness,
exactly, yeah.
rightness and wrongness. Yeah, rightness and wrongness. Whether something is right or wrong. Whether something is right or wrong is just. So that is explained by whether there is net normative reasons. And goodness and badness are just types of normative reasons. That's what I want to say. So reasons that count in favor are good. Reasons that count against are bad.
Wait, let me write this down.
Yeah.
Because I suspected you would answer something like this. But so all the normative...
Sure.
Badness just equates normative reasons against action, right?
So badness is whatever normative reasons there are against the action. Yeah.
Okay. So am I correct in saying that you view badness as normative reasons against action, and goodness as normative reason for action?
Yes.
Yeah. And these normative reasons are generated by states of the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it follows from that goodness and badness are generated from states of the world too.
Yeah, so then badness and goodness. So yeah, but then it's the fact that ultimately the explanation for the wrong and the right action are going to be, in its most fine-grained analysis, explained by the facts of the world that explain goodness and badness. Yeah. So it's not explained by goodness and badness itself, but it's on its ultimate analysis, it's explained by the facts of the world that are the same facts which generate goodness and badness.
Yes, I mean, of course. Of course, the things I'll add is that, I'll just add that doesn't mean that the goodness and badness is not there, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be a very complicated and insane way of, to understand rightness or wrongness. It's going to be very hard to understand. You know what it would be like? It would be like, here's an analogy to what that would be like. It's like, if instead of doing a randomized controlled trial to see if a new drug works, what we can say is that if we had all the knowledge of each atom and each molecule and how they would vibrate and the way the electrons would work and everything like that, we would know if a new drug was available, how it would affect the human body, because we could just have a supercomputer calculate everything at the atomic level, or maybe even at the subatomic level. And so we don't need any of these types of things in between. We don't need any principles that capture these kind of or ways of figuring these things out. We could just calculate at the atomic level, and who needs the trial? But it's going to be very hard to do that, and it's also going to be very hard to find rightness and wrongness just by. I understand there are particularists out there that who I've spoken to. I know that Jonathan Dancy would disagree with this, but I think it's going to be very hard to just to find out rightness or wrongness just by looking at the non-moral facts of the world, at least in many cases. Maybe not all cases, but many cases it would be hard to do that. But yes.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's certainly the case that what is rightness and wrongness is going to be trivially based on the non-moral facts of the world, and that just follows from because rightness or wrongness is based on goodness badness, and goodness badness is based on moral. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I was the. Yeah, because so then your model. I mean, you might want to do this for other reasons, but your model doesn't commit you to any ontological or like metaphysically independent moral facts that denote goodness and badness in order to determine wrongness, because you can determine wrongness without the existence of those. But you want to keep it right now because you think that there might you either think there might be such metaphysical fact, or you think that having those there offers good explanatory power for how to understand wrongness.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
There may be some. Yeah, I don't want to commit to there not being anything there, and even if there weren't there, there are many situations that I could find myself in where I would have no without understanding it in terms of goodness or badness. I have no idea how I would come to the rightness or wrongness conclusion just by looking at the non-normative facts without that analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So then the final thing I just want to, and this is not really an objection I have clearly formulated, but it's just something that perhaps we could go through together that I think could be beneficial for you. Is
Sure.
that cool?
Yeah, sure.
So I worry a bit right now that your normative theory, or like at least it's a condition for rightness and wrongness, might be circular. I'm not sure if it's viciously circular or if it's non-viciously circular. But I'm just going to take you through it and why I have this concern. Again, I'm not saying I have an overwhelming concern, but something like this. So you get it seems to me you get the answer that an action is wrong if and only if it's bad. Then you say an action is net bad. Oh, so an action is wrong if and only if it's net bad, to be precise.
Yeah.
An action is net bad if and only if it has net normative reasons against it. Now, then we also have the...
Well, it's just the same thing. It's not because, it's just that net normative reasons is... It just means... Like, it's just an analytical, relationship that I'm just defining... Since goodness and badness are reasons for and against, then it's just an analytically true thing that that if there is net badness, then there is net normative reasons against.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
And then it's also true on your model that an action is wrong if and only if it has net normative reasons against it, right?
Well, yeah, because analytically, it's just another word for the same thing. Yeah.
I feel like you're throwing in the word analytically because you're trying to avoid some objection. But I just want to note I don't have an objection.
No, it's fine. I just want to be. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
No,
Okay,
but
go.
if then I were to ask you, okay, but what is it that has? What are those actions that have net normative reasons against it? What does it mean to have net normative reasons? Then it seems to me you would say, well, it means that those things are bad. And then I'm like, okay, but what type of things is it that generate badness normative reasons? And you would say, well, it's those things which are bad. And I said, okay, but what are those things which are bad? And you would say, well, it's those that have normative reasons.
That's not what I would say. Wait, hold on.
Okay.
Wait.
No, that's the way it seemed to me.
No, there would be the things that generate normative reasons are going to be certain states of affairs about the world, about the non-normative features. There's going to be certain states of affairs in the non-normative features, and those states of affairs generate the normative reasons that count in favor or against.
Yeah, exactly. So we're just going through this together.
Sure.
At this point, I don't think we're having a debate about anything.
Okay, cool.
We'll just figure out something. Yeah. So an action is bad, net bad, if and only if it has net normative reasons against it.
Mm-hmm.
Thing, and then I ask, what are net normative reasons? And then you say it's an aggregation of the what are those net normative reasons which determines net badness? And you say, well, it's the bad normative reasons.
Well, no. That, when you say
Okay, no?
yeah, no. So if what determines if something has what determines something has net normative reasons? What determines whether something has net normative reasons are going to be summating up the reasons that count in favor and count against. And what determines counting in favor, the reasons that count in favor or count against, are going to be the features of the world, the non-normative features of the world.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah. So is this true? Things which generate normative reasons against actions are states of the world, right?
Yeah, they're going to be things which generate normative reasons against actions are going to be states of the world. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then I'm gonna ask now. Then I can ask, okay, do you have an example of such a state of affair? And you would say, it might be an action which has a lot of negative utility, or it might be an action which violates some certain duties, or it might be an action which has really bad quality, right?
Yeah.
And those are bad actions.
Those are actions that have bad to them, yeah. Those are actions that form the reasons against, sure.
Yeah. And then I say, but why are those actions bad? And you say, well, those are those actions that have normative reasons against them. And
wait a minute. I see where this is. Wait, hold on. So
yeah,
because there's always there are things that I value, right? And you can always ask, well, why do you value the thing that you value? Well, like what makes the thing bad you care about? This is like.
Well, yeah. So no, I agree that if this is where we end up, then that's not a problem at all. I agree with that.
Sure.
I worry that you end up somewhere different.
Oh no. Okay, I see. Yeah, no, I think I end up in the first area because at some point I'm just going to answer that. Well, these are the things I care about.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But
sure.
By virtue of your model, you need a generalizable normative reason that underpins all of the things you care about.
Yeah.
Now.
Well, I mean, I don't know if there may be some counterexample, but sure.
So there has to be a similar normative reason, which explain. It seems to me, at least, there has to be in your model a similar normative reason, which serves as the fundamental explanation for why violating duties generate reason against it, for why doing things which decrease utility generate reasons against it, and why performing actions with bad quality of will generates reasons against it. All of those things, I think, it seems to me, are going to have to be based on a similar normative reason.
No. I mean, yeah, for sure. Because there's different. So this is going to bottom out into the states of affairs that are going to generate utility or disutility, and the states of affairs that will violate rights or fulfill rights. And if you ask me, well, why do I, why are those things right or wrong? My answer to you is just because I value both of those things.
Yeah, no, I understand. So but again, I'm actually not. I think you think that I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm trying to sneak in something metaethically here, but that's not what I'm doing.
All right. Yeah. Okay. It does feel like that. I want to. Yeah. Sure.
No, because you want. Your models. It seems to me that your model requires, as I said, for there to be a normative reason that is operationalized in actions, in state of affairs which are negative utility, in state of inducing, in state of affairs which has to do with duty violation, and in state of affairs which has to do with bad quality of will. Now it's still then that, because that's the only way you can get them on the same scale.
Sure.
And then I'm And then is your answer that, well, the normative reason is just that I care about those things?
Yeah, if you were to ask me the question further, that is where I would just bridge to metaethics.
Okay.
If you ask the question, okay, well, why is it that both utility and rights violations provide a normative reason? Well, yeah, my answer is just going to be that, well, these are the things I care about.
I might have to think about this, because I do think that there is something about this which seems to me to be problematic that doesn't invoke meta-ethics.
Okay.
And as I hope you can tell from this conversation, I'm usually not like completely off track when
No. You may not. When it gets to this point, because I've had this conversation a lot, although I will agree you're in a unique case. Generally, this tends to be the bridge to metaethics because I think it's important. Like here's what I'll say. Let me offer you a similar type of semantic scope type of like because here's the thing, like you know value pluralism, right?
Yes.
So like let's say I just someone has two different values that that are incommensurable. Well, I don't even know if I have to put the word in. Maybe I do have to put the word incommensurable, but to be a value pluralist by definition. But there's this question if threshold deontology is value pluralist, and I think at a certain scope it is. But I also think at a certain scope, many forms of deontology and utilitarianism are also value pluralist. Like, I can ask the question to the utilitarian. Let's say we're talking about a hedonic utilitarian. I can say, well, what makes this action bad? And the utilitarian can say, well, the action is bad because it decreases utility. And I can ask the question, well, why? Like, what about? Actually, no. I think yeah. Okay. So the point so I can ask, and when I ask, well, what is it? What does it mean to decrease utility, and why that would be bad? And the utilitarian would say, well, there are many things that go into utility. There's joy, there's suffering, there's pain, there's pleasure, and all of these. And when they say utility, they don't just mean this like utility is just this abstract notion for all of these different states of affairs. So a utilitarian also has this idea that there are these very different states of affairs of the world that are wrong, and all they're doing is finding a way of putting them all under the same type of umbrella of things they consider wrong. There's a similarity they link there. They say, well, there's certain like, they could say, well, there's a certain like commonality in the umbrella. But they care about a lot of different things. They care about as long as they understand them in terms of utility. But there's nothing about. But there's nothing. There just doesn't seem to be any problem with the utilitarian just having two umbrellas. Like, let's say they have let's say someone can be. Like, I don't know. They can just add in another umbrella and just say, well, these are the things I care about too. Like, so they're wrong. Like, I just don't see the issue. There's going to be multiple values on different semantic scopes of different normative theories. Like, so. Ross will care about, on deontology, Ross will care about beneficence, Ross will care about non-malfeasance, and all of these different particular things that generate reasons against or for an action are going to be subsumed under an umbrella, and they'll just call the umbrella rights. What I'm just doing is adding taking these umbrellas and just putting an umbrella on top of those two umbrellas, and calling them the things I care about, like or whatnot. Or I could maybe there's a better way I can like find a commonality between them, but I just don't see what the problem of that is going to be, other than going into some kind of meta-ethical question. Because I don't have a further answer. Yeah, I don't have a further answer.
That might be correct. I'm thinking about this, and I think this is one of those things I will have to think a bit more about, and perhaps we can bring this up in the third conversation where we go through the incorporation of positive duties in this model.
Oh yes. Because there's a very different model. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But let me ask you one more thing.
Sure.
So you see what I think I'm getting at. So if I ask a utilitarian what's bad, they will say those states of affair which have negative utility, or more negative utility than positive utility. Now I can ask, what are those things which have negative utility against them? And they will refer to certain actions, certain hypotheticals, right? Here we are not going into a meta-ethical domain, right?
Yeah.
But then we're still in the domain of normative theorizing, because I'm asking them to explain the normative theory and how it works.
Yeah.
And but then I could further ask, why is negative utility bad?
Yeah.
And then I would be going into the realm of meta-ethics.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Now, if I ask you what's bad, you will say things which there are normative reasons against.
Yes. And then you'll say, well, what are the things that are normative reasons against, right?
And you will point to certain states of the world.
Yes. And those states you say, well, what are those states of affairs? And I'll say the kind of states of affairs where either there's disutility, the same answer utilitarian gave, or the states of affairs.
One second. Just hold on. Someone's knocking at the door. 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry, back. Yeah.
Sure.
So
I will answer. So then you can ask me, okay, well, what are those states of affairs for me? And so I will say, the states of affairs of the world are going to be the states of affairs that generate disutility. And I could point just like the utilitarian. I can say, well, it's going to be pain, suffering. And then I can say, and then I'll say, or the kind of states of affairs of the world where rights are violated. And then I can point to breaking promises or lying, just like the deontologist would answer. And then if you ask me, well, why? And then if you ask me, well, why is that bad? Then we get to normative, and then we get to meta-ethics.
That's what I don't think happens on your theory, because you haven't provided me an explanation for why they are, a unified explanation for why they are bad. Beyond you can't do that beyond. It seems to me you can't do that just beyond reasserting. Well, there are things that have net normative reasons against them. That, to me, intuitively, and I might be wrong here. I just want to say I might be wrong here. Seems different from the type of answer that the utilitarian is able to provide at this stage in the analysis. Because I asked the utilitarian what's bad, they say things which contain negative utility. Now I can ask what are those things, and they point to different states of the world, and I say, okay, so murdering 1,000 people, that's bad, and because it's something that
wait a minute. Why do I need to do that? Why do I? Well, okay, so I understand the utilitarian can say, well, the things that are bad are going to be, so it's just a different scope of where the or comes in. So I'm saying the things that are bad are the things that decrease utility or the things that decrease rights. I
guess simply understood is that given that there must be a unifying normative reason in your model between what generates the badness in duty violations and in utility negative outcomes, it seems to me that in order to understand your model, I need to understand what that reason is. But right now, you don't have a reason beyond the fact that, it's the things which have net negative reasons against them or something
Wait,
like that.
no, that's not what I'm. No, okay. So, what I'm saying is that I'm saying that the things that are bad is A or B. The states of affairs in the world such that A or B, right? So instead of like a utilitarian just saying A, I'm saying A or B. Those are the states of the world that provide normative reasons against or in favor.
Yeah.
A or B instead of it. Now, if you ask like, well, why A or B, as opposed to A, or as opposed to just B or something like that, I don't have an answer for that. Like beyond a meta.
No, that's not what.
Well, what are you asking? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I just want to say that I have an intuition here, and I'm trying to like pursue the intuition.
Sure.
Yeah. So I guess I think so I'm just gonna. I think I have to go soon, and I would like to have a small chat with you alone.
Sure.
Before
Yeah.
I go.
Absolutely.
But I think if you kind of like lowered your willingness or like your inclination to defend your theory from a potential objection and focus more on trying to explore if there is an objection here to be found in the first place, regardless of whether it could be answered.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. The reason is the reason I might seem that way is because I've been here many times before, like and I haven't ended up founding this type of objection.
Yeah. You haven't been here with me.
Yeah, no, I understand. So what I'm trying to say here is that if I say the things that are bad are the states of affairs of the world such that A obtains or B obtains, I may not have like some sort of thing that I just don't. Like, it seems I don't have what I'm doing is taking the A and taking B and like saying that they both generate normative reasons, and these are states and affairs of the world. A utilitarian would just say A, right? We can ask on a different scope, like, well, what is it that unifies pain and sadness? Right? We can ask the utilitarian, pain. Well, you care about pain and you care about sadness, right? Pain generates normative reasons against something, and sadness generates normative reasons against something. But why is it the case that both of those things generate reasons against it? And then the only answer the utilitarian has is just to say, well, I'm giving a term. I'm coming up with a term that just subsumes these things. It's a label. It's called utility. And within that label, there are many different things. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, that's what the utilitarian is doing. They could say, well, it's like, yeah. And so what I'm doing here is I'm faced with this question, well, there's some umbrella that I have. I can call it whatever. I can call it threshold deontology or whatever. And that's just subsuming A and B, which are the states of affairs of the world where utility is decreased, and the states of affairs of the world where there's rights violations. So at a lower scope, you can ask me. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So this is the way it seems to me, and I don't think we're going to resolve this now.
Sure.
And the way it seems to me, if I ask, just let me finish what I'm going to say
Sure,
here.
sure, go ahead.
So if I ask a utilitarian what's bad, they say things which increase negative utility or something like that. Now I can ask, what are those things which have negative utility? And they say, well, it's states of affair, and it's states of affair, and they would point like, murder, rape, etc. And I ask, why are they bad? I ask, and they say, well, because they are the ones who generate negative utility. Now, in some sense, this is circular, and it's going to be circular without a meta-ethical theory. I think this is fine. I don't think this is a
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
I don't think this is a problem at all. But this is what it seems happens here. It seems to me that here, I ask what's bad, and I get an understanding of what is bad that doesn't refer back, that doesn't trivially refer back to what is bad. So I get like more information.
I can give
about
you that answer.
What is bad?
Yeah.
Wait.
Sure. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
It seems that this is the way it seems to me that if I ask you what's bad, you say things which there are normative reasons again. Now, if I ask you, what are those things which you have normative reasons against? You point to the state of affairs of the world, and I ask, oh, okay, so those are the reasons for why, those are the things which are bad. And you say, yeah, and I say, and they are bad because they have normative reasons against them. And you say, yes. But then it seems I
Wait, that's not my answer though.
Okay.
I just say at that level. So if you say, okay, well these are the things that are bad. The things that are bad are the things that decrease utility or violate rights. And you ask, what are those kind of things? And then I'll say the things that decrease utility are the things that obtain when certain brain states happen, like suffering, pain, experience, etc. And the things that are rights violations obtain on certain states of affairs where there's like broken promises, violation of autonomy, like murder, etc. And then if you ask me why those are bad, I just say, well, those are bad because they're bad.
Yeah, so I think it's the difference. I think the difference is that when I ask the utilitarian, I get an understanding of badness that I can, I get like an explanation of badness, which is understandable because it's one that is cashed out in negative utility, which is an independent feature of the world. When I ask you what's bad, you say the things that have normative reasons against it, but I can't understand that. Well, it seems to me I don't get more information than what I already got from saying what is bad.
Why do you keep saying that? Because I am giving you that. I'm giving you the states of affairs.
Yeah, but you're giving me the states of affairs like duties and utility.
Okay.
But there must be something. So everything that is bad in the utility here I think is the crux of the case. Everything that is bad on the utilitarian view, all the actions are gonna be explained. Okay, sorry. Now I know how to formulate it. All the things that are bad on the utilitarian action view are gonna be all the states, all the raped, murdered, whatever, are gonna be explained by referencing utility.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And all the things that are bad on your view are gonna be referenced by explaining an underlying normative reason.
To be clear, all the things that are going to be bad are going to be understood to draw the parallel. All the things that are going to be bad are going to be understood by reference to utility and rights violations.
Well, they're not. But there's an underpinning normative reason.
But we already agreed that, like in principle, like we can, the fine grain would be those. Yeah.
Yeah, due to the fact that there's an underpinning normative reasons for them. Now, it just seems to me, and I might be wrong here, and I think we should pause it here, and I'm like very willing to concede and admit that I'm wrong and I need to think more of it. But it seems to me that there's a way in which I haven't gotten any understanding of what the normative reasons are, and hence by virtue of that, I haven't gotten an understanding of what you think badness is. Whereas on the utilitarian calculus, I get an understanding of what badness is because it's negative utility, and I can look at, and that is what explains why murder and rape is bad. But what explains why murder and rape is bad, on your view, is going to be the net underpinning normative reason, which I began by inquiring to what that is in the beginning. And you point me to exemplars of that things that have that net normative reason, but you don't tell me what the net normative reason is that unifies those exemplars. While on the utilitarian view, I know what is unifying the exemplars on the case, because that's the thing. It's the things which generate negative utility, and those things are bad. But in your view, it seems to me that I don't have that same information content.
So
That's
you,
just the way it
yeah.
seems.
So I think this is coming from. So first of all, I'll point out that it's not it's not going to be a different type of circularity. It's just going to be a different semantic scope. It's just going to be where things end up being umbrellized in a different semantic scope. So what I will grant, of course, is that a utilitarian has a very simple umbrella that can unify different states of affairs of the world together. And I will grant that a deontologist may have an umbrella that unifies different rights violations together. And that is, while I agree that it's appealing, that doesn't make the circularity different, because it just, there's something different that happens at a different scope here. So, for example, if you ask the utilitarian, well, what is it that unites pain? And what is it that unites sadness? And what is it that it unites having a disease? What is it that unites, failing to accomplish the feeling you get when you fail to accomplish your goal? The utilitarian actually will have, believe it or not, they will have a little bit of trouble giving you something that unites it. They'll give you a name for it. They'll give you a name that unites it. That's called utility, right? And we understand these things because we understand the things that utility unites under. The deontologist can give you the same umbrella that unites all of these different rights violations, because they're not just like care about one thing. They care about a whole bunch of different things could be rights violations, and they'll give you an umbrella that unites it. But when asked, well, why is it that these things fall under the category of a rights violation, the only answer they're going to be able to give you is that this is a word that they're using to capture those different things. It's just an umbrella word. And my umbrella word is just happening at a higher level. It's a level up. It's just saying, well, I have this umbrella word that's just being used to say the utility plus rights violations. And so at a different semantic scope, the utilitarians are going to give you the same answer as I am. I'm just giving it to you at a different scope of the problem.
Okay, so I have to go.
Sure.
Soon, and I want to have just one private chat with you before I go.
Okay.
But I want to give a short reply to that, and then you can have the final word.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
We can keep it short. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So my word is just, it seems to me that you're invoking semantic scope as something that to equalize between different robustness of explanation, but I don't think that's how semantic scope works. I think that you get different robustness of explanation right now in your formulation of your theory and in the theory of, for example, utilitarianism or deontologist. And I think that amounts to a substantial reason right now, or one substantial reason, not the substantial reason, but one substantial reason for preferring utilitarianism or deontologist when just looking at this component of what it is that we want from a normative theory, because of the fact it seems to me that they have quite a significant deeper explanation of how reasons are generated in their theory and what reasons are than you have at this point in time. So that's my final word. You can respond to that, and then perhaps we could just
Sure.
sure.
Yeah, sure. The one thing I'll say, so I'm not trying to say that use the word semantic scope to give an indication that there's not a easier unification on a utilitarian view of reasons or an easier unification on deontology on reasons. I will happily grant that. I will grant that a utilitarian, because, and the reason is because I am giving the term that unifies different types of states of affairs at a level that the utilitarians and deontologists are not, such that there seems to be a bit more work at unifying on my model than the utilitarian or deontologist model, and I'll grant that. I will happily grant that they have a unification that's more simple than mine, trivially, because my unification requires an additional step. The reason I'm invoking semantic scope is because in both of these cases, regardless of where it happens, it doesn't result ultimately in a different type of circularity. That's the reason I gave you that specific type of reply. So yes, you can say that well, the utilitarians have an easier type of unification, and the deontologists have an easier type of unification than you do, and I grant that, and so that may be something that counts in favor of those models over mine. Sure. But that's a very different type of criticism than saying that there's a type of circularity that obtains on my view that's not obtaining on the utilitarian view. I think that's why I invoke semantic scope, because if you actually traced it down to the bottom, you'd find the same type of answer. It's just that with my model, that tracing will take one extra step. That's why. And so yes, that may count in favor against it. Of course, I think there are countervailing favors that count in favor of my theory, which is why I hold it. But in either case, we're not going to get a different type of circularity. It's just going to push the same type of circularity off one step. And that's but in any case, I do want to say that it is very nice talking to you, and I really do enjoy our conversations. And I think this was a very good conversation. Yeah, I mean, it's a breath of fresh air to talk to you. And I look forward to having more conversations with you.
Yeah, cool. I agree. Cool. I agree with everything you said, except the circularity part. But we'll hash that out.
Sure.
Next. Can we just jump into a private room?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, it is. Let me just stop the recording. Okay, sure.